The house smelled like lemon polish and grief. Dad's tools still hung neatly on the garage wall, each one in its place as if he'd come back any minute to finish what he started. He'd always been that way, steady, careful, deliberate. The kind of man who saved screws and labeled jars and paid his bills a week early. When he passed, it felt like the foundation of my world cracked right down the middle. After the funeral, I sat on the porch in the dark until the sky turned gray. That's when Vivian came out, my stepmother. Her black dress shimmered faintly in the porch light, and her red lipstick was too bright for a mourning widow. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said, "Evan, your father wanted to make sure you were taken care of. He left you the bulk of his savings." Her words barely registered. I'd never thought about inheritance, about money, but when she said the amount, $850,000, it hit me like cold water. My father, the man who lived modestly and never took a vacation longer than a weekend, had somehow saved nearly $1 million. He'd always talked about setting something aside for the future. I guess I was that future. Vivian smiled sadly, her eyes glistening. He wanted you to have a head start, to build something of your own. In those first few days, I was grateful for her. She handled the funeral, the paperwork, the endless phone calls. I was too numb to question her efficiency. She was composed, graceful, and spoke to lawyers and bankers as if she'd done it all before. A week after the will was read, she brought up the idea of investing the money. "Keeping that much in a bank account doesn't make sense," she said one evening as we sat in the living room. The fireplace cast soft light over her pearl necklace. "There's a new opportunity, cryptocurrency. My friend's broker is brilliant. He's doubled my savings in 6 months. Crypto." I barely understood the word, but she spoke with such confidence, such certainty, that I didn't want to seem foolish. She told me I could triple the inheritance within a year. She said my father would have wanted me to take risks, to think big. So I agreed. She handled the paperwork, transferring the money to what she called a diversified investment wallet. I signed what she asked me to sign. She kissed my cheek and said, "You've made the right choice." For a while, everything seemed fine. She would send me brief updates, "Market's up again," or "Your investments are looking strong." I didn't understand the numbers, but I trusted her. She was family. Then, 3 months later, I got the message. "The market crashed. I'm so sorry, Evan. Everything's gone." I called her again and again. No answer. I drove to her house. It was empty. The "for sale" sign creaked in the wind. Neighbors said she'd left town days earlier. The next morning, I sat in my father's old Chevy, the only thing left in my name, and turned the key. The engine groaned but started. That night, parked by the river, I realized the truth. Vivian hadn't lost the money. She'd taken it, and I was too blind to see it coming. The first night I slept in the truck, the air was so cold it hurt to breathe. I used my jacket as a blanket and Dad's old toolbox as a pillow. I told myself it was temporary, just until I figured things out. But days turned to weeks, and the truck became more than a shelter. It became a confession booth. Every night I'd lie there, staring at the roofliner, replaying every conversation with Vivian, every signature, every moment I'd been stupid enough to trust her. I parked behind an old gas station on the edge of town. The owner, a kind man named Sal, let me use the hose to wash up before opening time. In exchange, I fixed his pump handles and replaced his fuses when they blew. That's how it started: odd jobs, cash payments, day-to-day survival. By day, I was a mechanic again, not in a proper shop, but in parking lots and alleys, fixing flat tires and changing oil for strangers. By night, I was invisible. I learned where to park without getting towed, which diners wouldn't mind me nursing a cup of coffee for hours. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in a store window and not recognize the man staring back, unshaven, sunburned, eyes hollowed out from exhaustion. The only thing that still looked familiar was the watch on my wrist, Dad's watch. I'd polish it with the corner of my sleeve every night before bed. The steady tick reminded me that time was still moving, even if I wasn't. But anger has a way of keeping you alive. The more I thought about Vivian, the less I believed her story, The market crashed, that was her excuse. But I'd seen her smug smile, her perfect nails tapping her phone while she checked the investments. She never once seemed nervous about losing everything. Once, in a half-dream, I imagined confronting her, slamming my fist on some marble table, demanding to see the broker, the records, something. In that dream, she just smiled and said, "Oh, Evan, you really should have known better." That dream stuck with me. It felt too real, too close to the truth, so I started asking around. I didn't have internet access most days, but when I found Wi-Fi at the library or a diner, I tried to look up crypto markets. None had crashed, the way she said. Prices went up and down, sure, but nothing like total loss. It was all smoke. Lies still, I had no proof, just a gut feeling and a lot of empty pockets. As the months dragged on, I got used to the rhythm of survival. Work, eat, park, sleep. People stopped asking questions. I stopped giving answers. Some nights, though, I'd drive out to the old house, the one Vivian sold. I'd park across the street and stare at the front porch light, imagining Dad sitting there with a beer, asking why I hadn't fought harder for what he left me. "I'm trying, Dad," I'd whisper into the dark. "I just don't know how." The watch ticked in reply, slow and steady. Somewhere inside me, a quiet fire began to burn, not just grief anymore, but resolve. I didn't know it yet, but my life was about to change again in the most unexpected place. At a roadside diner, and it would all start with a familiar voice saying my name. By the time winter melted into early spring, I had settled into a strange rhythm. Nights in the truck, days washing dishes at Millie's Diner, a little roadside cafe with flickering neon and coffee that never cooled fast enough. The diner was full of truckers, late, night wanderers, and people who didn't ask questions about anyone else's life. It suited me perfectly, invisible, unnoticed. I spent most nights scrubbing plates, wiping down counters, and listening to the hum of conversations I had no part in. It was boring, repetitive, but comforting in a strange way. For the first time in months, I could pretend my life wasn't a wreck. That night, as I dried a stack of plates, a familiar voice called from the doorway, "Evan Carter." I froze mid-motion, my hands still wet with soapy water. I turned slowly, and there he was, a man I hadn't seen in years. Gray hair at the temples, shoulders wide but slightly stooped, and eyes that mirrored my father's steel, blue gaze. "Uncle Ray." My voice cracked. He nodded, stepping into the warmth of the diner. The bell above the door jingled, but he barely noticed. His eyes scanned me up and down, taking in the dirt, streaked jacket, the tired expression, the hollow cheeks. "What happened to you?" he asked, sliding into the booth across from me before I could answer. For the first time in months, I didn't hide. I told him everything, about Dad, about Vivian, about the $850 zero that supposedly vanished, about the truck becoming my home. About nights spent wondering how someone I trusted could lie so easily. Uncle Ray listened quietly, nodding occasionally, his fingers drumming on the table. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "She always gave me bad vibes," he said finally. "Your dad told me she handled everything near the end maybe too much. I didn't want to believe it, but now." He shook his head. "Now I can see it." I swallowed hard. "Do you think she really stole it?" Ray's eyes narrowed. "Crypto doesn't just vanish, Evan. There's a trail, always a trail. If someone's smart enough, they can cover it, but not completely." That night, after my shift, we went back to his tiny apartment above a laundromat. He pulled out his old laptop, dusty from years of retirement, and taught me what I hadn't known before: how to track digital wallets, how to read blockchain transactions, how to follow the money. We worked for hours, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking strategy. Every small clue we uncovered confirmed my worst suspicion. Transactions were moving through multiple accounts, bouncing across borders, but they all led back to one place: Vivian. She had taken the money, every cent. The anger that had simmered quietly inside me for months boiled over. Not just anger, but a raw, burning betrayal. My stepmother, the woman who smiled at my father's funeral, who had convinced me to trust her, was living somewhere far away, spending what should have been mine. Ray leaned back in his chair. We're going to get it back, Evan, but not by rushing. We do this smart, patient, like a chess game. I nodded, staring at the screen. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. Somewhere between the hum of the laptop fan and the glow of the monitor, I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about justice, and this time I wasn't alone. The months that followed were some of the hardest and most rewarding of my life. With Uncle Ray guiding me, we meticulously tracked Vivian's digital footprints, tracing her crypto transfers through a web of offshore accounts. Every discovery felt like a small victory, but Ray reminded me to be patient. The goal isn't just to get the money back, he said. It's to make sure she sees it, makes her feel the consequences. Meanwhile, I poured every ounce of energy into rebuilding my life. We rented a small, run-down garage, the kind Dad had always dreamed of owning. We cleaned, painted, and worked tirelessly to turn it into a functioning repair shop. My hands blistered, my back ached, and yet I felt alive for the first time since Dad's funeral. Slowly, word spread. Customers appreciated honesty in a town where everyone seemed to cut corners. Ray handled the finances while I worked on cars, fixing what was broken, not just vehicles, but myself. Within a year, we had a loyal clientele, a small but growing income, and a reputation for integrity. Then came the news: Vivian's lavish Florida condo was frozen. Her offshore accounts were under investigation. The police were involved, and she was scrambling to cover her tracks. I didn't celebrate privately. Instead, I felt a strange calm. The scales were tipping. It was one rainy afternoon when she walked into Millie's diner. The same diner where I had washed dishes, where I had hidden from the world, where I had nursed bitterness like a wound. She looked thinner, desperate. Her elegance faded into something frantic. "Evan," she whispered, barely loud enough for me to hear. Her eyes darted around, searching for witnesses for sympathy. "You have to help me. They're saying terrible things." I took my time getting up from the booth, smoothing my jacket. My father's watch glinted in the fluorescent light, the same watch I'd polished every night in my truck. The steady tick, a reminder that time moves even when people betray you. "Vivian," I said calmly, my voice soft but firm. "I know." She froze, her lips quivered. "You set me up?" she asked, her voice cracking with fear. I shook my head. "No, you did." For a moment, she looked like she wanted to beg, to cry, to explain. I took a deep breath, feeling the years of anger, humiliation, and loss fall away like ash. "Thank you," I said quietly. "You taught me what real value is. Not money, not things, but integrity. And for that, I'm grateful." I left a $20 bill on the table for the waitress, walked past her frozen gaze, and stepped out into the morning light. My new truck gleamed, the engine humming like a heartbeat. I slid into the driver's seat, adjusted Dad's watch on my wrist, and smiled. Vivian remained inside, watching me drive away, powerless. She had underestimated me, underestimated the man she thought she had broken. As the road stretched ahead, the wind whipping through the open window, I realized something profound. I hadn't just survived. I had risen, and this time I was unstoppable. For the first time in months, I felt free, not because the money was back, not because Vivian was defeated, but because I had reclaimed my life. And as the sun climbed over the horizon, the watch ticked steadily on my wrist, a quiet promise that some things, honor, courage, love, can never vanish.